Don't cry, Isabella. Tears ruin the presentation. The words dropped like cold mercury, rolling across the white porcelain surface of a delicate dessert plate. A single drop of dark chocolate, carefully swirled atop the mousse cake, had now smudged, blending with the streak of tears on Isabella's cheek. No one yelled. No one slammed a fist or shouted obscenities. But in the way Marcus Vance spoke, soft as silk, sharp as a razor, everyone understood. This was a threat. The back door for staff swung open. A tall man entered, carrying a duffel bag, wearing an oversized shirt and faded trousers that didn't quite fit. The name tag on his chest read, Caleb. His eyes scanned the kitchen. Fluorescent light cast a sterile glow on his chiseled face, damp with sweat from the oven's heat. He quietly moved past those who didn't bother to look up, as if he were part of the wall. But he saw everything. Ethan Hayes, CEO of Hayes Hospitality, the corporation that owned the entire restaurant chain, was now standing inside his own empire, and no one knew. He wasn't here to review the food. He was here because the numbers didn't add up. A restaurant with a sterling reputation, rising revenue, yet plummeting profit, and a staff turnover rate that had doubled in just 6 months. He needed answers, and they weren't in the reports. They were in the way Marcus Vance, the manager he once trusted, looked at people. The kitchen of the Gilded Plate was built like an old-school theater. Each section has its own backstage wing. The main line, the dessert station, the dishwashing pit. Out front, the dining room shimmered with crystal lighting, the clink of wine glasses, the hum of jazz smooth as red wine. Behind the curtain, it was all sizzling pans, clattering knives, and silence. Not the silence of focus, the silence of fear. Marcus stepped out of the kitchen, clad in a tailored Italian black suit, his tie perfectly knotted, his smile stitched like a seam. As he passed Samuel Washington, an elderly dishwasher hunched over a pile of stainless steel trays, Marcus let slip a comment. Quiet, yet loud enough. Still moving in slow motion. Old-timer? Samuel didn't respond. He just kept working, his calloused hands carefully polishing each wine glass like they were antiques. Caleb, Ethan, saw it all, and something in his chest tightened. Assigned to clean the prep area, Ethan hadn't even picked up a cloth when Marcus approached and, in an accidental gesture, knocked over a tray of pure olive oil, each liter costing nearly $100. The oil spread across the floor like silent blood. No one moved. A few eyes darted. Marcus raised an eyebrow at Caleb. Ethan bent down, dipped a cloth in water, and began to clean, quietly, thoroughly. No complaint, no reaction. But inside him, a fire ignited. Not because of the oil, but because of the brazen humiliation, an insult not just to him, but to the dignity of everyone forced to bow in this place. Amidst the dense air, thick as smoke from the grill, something unexpected happened. Isabella, after wiping away her tears, returned to the dessert station. When no one was watching, she picked up a freshly baked croissant, slipped it into a small paper bag, and quietly tucked it into Samuel's personal storage cubby. Samuel saw it, said nothing, just gave a nod, the kind of nod from someone who had survived war, discrimination, and decades of being overlooked. Ethan witnessed the entire moment, and in that instant he understood. This investigation was no longer about Marcus. It was no longer about profits. It was about people like Isabella, like Samuel, about faint lights flickering in the darkness. And if he didn't act, those lights would go out forever. The next morning, Caleb was wiping down the prep counter when laughter rang out from the dining hall. Marcus's signature, "You're an important person" laugh. He looked through the glass partition. Marcus was leaning in, whispering something to an older female guest while pouring wine for her husband with practiced charm. Not a single flaw, not a trace of the cruelty from the night before. He was a master of disguise. Back in the kitchen, the air was just as heavy as day one. But this time, Ethan noticed more. Marcus didn't rule with fear alone. He manipulated through division. Leo's station was always spotless, fully stocked, and never short of fresh ingredients. The shift schedule on the whiteboard showed Leo working every Friday and Saturday night, the busiest times of the week. Meanwhile, Isabella's shifts were constantly shuffled. Early morning, late nights, no pattern. Once, she worked 12 hours straight with no assistant. And Samuel? His name wasn't on the board at all. He did the jobs no one else wanted. One afternoon, Leo delivered a dish just as Marcus walked by. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder and smiled. "Good job, kid. You're sharp, reliable. You got eyes." Then added, "You know what I mean?" His gaze drifted toward Isabella. Ethan understood. The young man was being groomed with praise, but the price was betrayal, polished into a tool to be turned against his own. That evening, Ethan happened into the HR office looking for an old invoice. Passing Marcus's desk, he noticed a folder slightly ajar. A corner of the ledger revealed a few handwritten lines. Spoiled foie gras, 18 pounds. Sold, $620 cash, Devereaux. Ethan slowly flipped a few pages, eyebrows tightening. Premium items, beluga caviar, 85 Wagyu beef, marked as spoiled, discarded, or handled internally. But nothing was actually spoiled. The goods were being offloaded into the black market through a known middleman. Devereaux, a name Ethan had heard before, someone infamous for cleaning out luxury kitchen stock for cash. Later that night, Caleb sat with Isabella while she cleaned pastry molds. Her voice was raspy. "I don't care about being yelled at or bounced between shifts. But if I lose my insurance, my daughter won't get her meds. She has breathing attacks at night. One time, I thought I lost her." Ethan couldn't breathe evenly. "Marcus knows." Isabella nodded. "And that's why he knows I won't leave." On the way home, Ethan stopped in the middle of a dim Chicago street. Neon signs blurred across his windshield. He sat motionless. This fight was no longer about internal mismanagement. It was a system built to exploit fear, love, and vulnerability to bind people in place. Marcus wasn't just twisting ethics. He was stripping away humanity through scheduling sheets and balance books. The next morning, Marcus assigned Ethan to clean the manager's office. On the desk sat a still warm cup of coffee. Pretending to trip, Ethan spilled it onto a stack of papers. While cleaning, he found a small notebook, not a ledger, but a personal journal. He flipped through quickly. The handwriting was messy but organized. Names, dollar amounts, cryptic codes. One section read, "Izzy, late X3, cut 4 hours. Sam, 1X broken plate, shift to back. Leo, bonus Saturday if he reports her again." And below that, Devereaux, drop Tuesday, foie $640, cash, no register. Ethan closed the book. His heartbeat was slow but heavy. This wasn't just evidence, it was a manual. The operations of a modern tyrant are executed through paperwork, rationalization, and invisibility. He stood still in the dim office, watching the glittering city lights beyond the glass. His hand clenched the notebook. His father once said, "Dignity is the most essential ingredient in a kitchen. Without it, every dish tastes hollow." Now Ethan understood. A reputation isn't destroyed by bad food. It's destroyed by leaders with no soul. The sharp scent of ammonia filled the air. Dishwater spilled across the floor like tiny waves, seeping into the fine cracks between ceramic tiles. Ethan stood beside Samuel in the dishwashing area, the farthest corner of the restaurant, where no one ventured unless they had to. There was no music here, no words of appreciation, only the clatter of plates and cutlery, like restrained, shallow breaths. "How long have you worked here?" Ethan asked quietly, eyes still on the pile of soapy dishes. Samuel wiped his hands, the overhead light glinting off the silver strands in his hair. 7 years. Before that, I taught high school history. But who wants to hear about Gettysburg when rent's due? He gave a faint smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. "Here, no one listens to me. But at least, I could still make a glass shine." Ethan watched as the old man bent to pick up a fork Marcus had deliberately knocked to the floor. Samuel cleaned it as if handling an ancient sword, then placed it precisely where it belonged. He never demanded respect. He lived as though he once had it, and had never let it go. Leo entered with a stack of order slips. He glanced at Ethan, then at Samuel. His gaze lingered for a second, just long enough to send a chill down Ethan's spine. He wasn't like Marcus. but there was something in his eyes today that felt off. Mid-shift, Marcus called Leo to the office. A few minutes later, Leo returned, expression blank, walking briskly through the kitchen corridor. Isabella was by the oven, watching him as he passed. Ethan followed into the supply room, pretending to look for towels, ears tuned to the muffled conversation from inside. "She's a liability," Marcus said. "We need winners, Leo." I'm not sure. Don't be naive. You want that manager role, don't you? We need loyalty, not feelings. Ethan clenched his fists. His palms were damp. Marcus didn't fire people. He made others do it for him, so they would carry the stain in his place. That was how he kept his hands clean and dirted everyone else's soul. That afternoon, the rumor hit like a shockwave, a surprise inspection from the city health department. Marcus was livid. He stormed into the kitchen, barking for the entire crew to assemble, his lips pressed so tight they turned purple. "Listen up. If they find anything out of line, we're all screwed. You think losing your job is the worst-case scenario? I'll make sure none of you work in a kitchen in Chicago ever again." His eyes scanned the room. "I'm not joking. You're each responsible for your station. Bury anything subpar. And don't leave a trace." No one said a word. Ethan saw Leo hesitate, then nod. He headed toward the walk-in fridge, avoiding Isabella's gaze. Samuel returned to the dish pit, moving slower than usual. Isabella stood still, hands gripping the tub of cream she was holding. Ethan stepped forward, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone." When the inspector entered the kitchen, Marcus played the perfect host. He smiled professionally, clipboard in hand, guiding the guest like a polished PR rep. "We maintain strict HACCP protocols. Oh, this here is our pastry section, where culinary artistry comes to life." Just then, Isabella, carrying a tub of fresh cream, slipped. A wet, visceral sound echoed as the container hit the floor, spilling a chunky, off-white liquid that lacked both temperature and texture. No one spoke. Only the sour smell of spoiled cream rose and hit the inspector's nose. Marcus froze. Isabella stammered an apology, pale with panic. But her eyes were locked on Ethan's. He nodded just slightly. No words needed. A quiet rebellion had begun. Moments later, Marcus dragged Isabella into the walk-in freezer. The door slammed. Ethan followed, standing just outside. He couldn't make out every word, but one sentence cut through the cold. "You think you're clever? I know everything about that little girl. Insurance? Wages? I can cut it. Right now." Ethan didn't need to hear more. The moment for waiting was over. No more watching. No more gathering evidence. No more playing along. It was time to act. "Now, we're filming an internal documentary." That's what Ethan told Marcus the next morning, inside the manager's office. About post-pandemic workplace culture. About how restaurants like the Gilded Plate preserve internal values through hardship. Marcus smirked, his eyes slicing toward the mirror like a razor's edge. "Of course," he said, adjusting his collar. "A man like me could inspire quite a few." Ethan gave a slight nod. In his mind, every move had been planned. The night before, he had called in his private legal team, hired an independent film crew, and arranged a full-staff recording session in the main dining room after closing. Overhead lights cast a spotlight onto the central table. The entire staff filled the room, tense faces, wary eyes. Marcus entered like a politician stepping onto a campaign stage. His eyes scanned the crowd, his smile lacquered and flawless. "It's an honor to speak with you all today. A team like this is our greatest asset." The cameras began to roll. Ethan, still in his Caleb disguise, stood beside the cameraman, waiting as Marcus rambled on, then stepped forward calmly. "Before you continue, may I say a few words?" His voice was steady, composed. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "By all means." Ethan turned to the staff. His gaze met each of theirs. His voice was low, deliberate, but clear. "Samuel, you taught me that dignity isn't about what we do. It's how we do it. I watched you polish every fork like it carried history." Samuel looked up and, for the first time, truly saw the man before him. Ethan continued, "Isabella, You showed me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's standing up for the ones you love, even when you know what it might cost. Isabella's hands tightened. A quiet breath escaped from someone in the back. Leo, you reminded me that the hardest choices are the ones that define who we are. Leo lowered his head. For the first time in weeks, tears streamed down his face. The room fell silent. Ethan turned to Marcus. The polished smile had begun to crack. And you, Marcus, you taught me something else. Ethan's tone shifted from gentle to sharp. You said, tears ruin presentation. You said, loyalty has a price. And you believe the value of a person is measured by how useful they are to you. Marcus jumped up, his voice hissing. Who do you think you are? Ethan removed his apron, his name tag, his cap. He stared Marcus in the eye. My name is Ethan Hayes. And this restaurant, this legacy, belongs to my father. All eyes turned to him. The room dropped into a vacuum of stunned silence. Isabella froze. Samuel whispered, Good Lord. Leo leapt to his feet. Marcus stepped back. Now, the expensive suit couldn't hide the subtle tremble in his hands. You're lying, he muttered. There's no proof. Ethan pulled out the small notebook he'd kept all week and placed it on the table. This goes to the police. Financial deals, manipulated shift schedules, black market sales, it's all documented. Marcus lunged for the book, but two plainclothes men stepped in. One was a former cop. The other is a private investigator from Hayes Group. Marcus recoiled, face pale. No one will be shouting today, Ethan said. We don't need to. You'll leave this place quietly, just like how you made others go silent. The two men escorted Marcus out, with the entire staff watching. No aplausos, no smiles, only silence. But this time, it was the silence of liberation. Ethan turned back to face the group, shaken, disoriented. He didn't promise raises. He didn't promise reform. He didn't unveil a 3-year vision. He simply said, Go home, rest. Tomorrow, we start again. Together. Coffee dripped, slowly, steadily. Its aroma spread gently through the kitchen, silent as a chapel before morning mass. Ethan stood by the machine, one hand on the filter like any other barista. His apron was crisp and white, shirt sleeves rolled up. He poured the first cup, took a sip, then nodded. Not bad. Not quite like Luca's cappuccino, the former barista who quit 3 months ago after a problem with Marcus, but at least it was made by someone who didn't see people as tools. One by one, they entered. No one spoke loudly. They moved as if afraid to disturb something fragile, something newly reborn. Isabella came first, her hair neatly tied, her eyes still puffy. Samuel followed, carrying the same worn kitchen towel he'd used for over a decade. Leo arrived last, hesitating at the door, unsure if he was welcome. Ethan didn't open with a meeting. No speeches. He acted. First, he turned to Isabella and handed her a handwritten plan. The first line read, Head pastry chef interim. You'll take charge of desserts, he said. You have full creative control over the menu. And you'll decide who assists you. Isabella's voice caught. I don't have a degree. Ethan smiled. Neither do I. Next, he laid a large envelope on the stainless steel table. Inside was an internal memo, establishing the Employee Wellness Fund for staff and family medical support. Funding source, 2% of Q1 net profit. First beneficiary, Isabella Rossi, to assist with her daughter's treatment. No one said a word, but Isabella cried. This time, no one told her to stop. Then came Leo. Ethan invited him to sit at the small table near the sink. You stood at a crossroads, Ethan said, his tone without judgment. And today, I won't bring up the past. I just want to ask, do you want to walk with me in a different direction? Leo looked up, eyes red. I was a coward. Ethan shook his head. No, you learned. And now, you can choose. Leo nodded gently. Nothing more needed to be said. Later, Ethan walked alone into the storage room, where soft light filtered through a dusty window. He pulled down an old wooden box from the top shelf. Inside, his father's sign. Dusty, a corner chipped, but the words were still there, hand-carved, deep and clear. Dignity is our main ingredient. Ethan carried it out, cleaned it with care, and hung it on the kitchen wall, centered, where everyone could see it daily. Samuel stood nearby and softly said, "I haven't seen that in years." Ethan replied, voice low, "It was never gone, just hidden." An hour later, the kitchen was alive again, but it was no longer Marcus's kitchen. No more avoided glances. No more whispered fears. No more coded shift charts. Isabella was testing a new citrus mousse while mentoring a younger staff member. Samuel hummed a tune. His voice trembled but was warm. Leo stood beside Ethan at the service counter, arranging trays. Each time he passed a plate, he smiled, genuinely. No one asked for apologies. They just needed someone willing to begin again, with them. Ethan looked around the kitchen. He saw a restaurant that wasn't perfect, but one filled with real people. No longer stifling, just breathing. In the reflection on the stainless steel counter, he didn't see a weary CEO or a man in hiding. He saw his father and himself. He picked up a wine glass and began polishing it with a clean towel. No cameras, no title, just two hands and one clear goal: to rebuild day by day. If the camera still rolled, it would slowly pull back. Final shot, sunlight pouring through the window, catching the engraved sign, "Dignity is our main ingredient." A new day, a new team, a beginning that needs no applause, only persistence. Sometimes, toxicity doesn't come in screams, but in fake smiles and sweet words hidden behind a shift schedule. And sometimes, heroes wear no cape, but polish a plate, slip a pastry into a coat pocket, or listen before they act. Because dignity doesn't come from a title. It comes from how we treat others, even when no one's watching. Have you ever worked somewhere where silence felt heavy as lead? Have you ever witnessed a quiet act of kindness, one that made you want to stand up and change something? Share your story below, so we remember, the right thing often starts in silence. If this story moved you, like to spread the message, comment to share your own journey, and subscribe to Toch Story so you never miss a story that stirs the soul. We tell stories not just to make you cry, but to remind you, hope still lives in this world.